Good morning, or noontime, lunchtime. We are starting a special session of the Budget Committee meeting, and this is a continuation of our discussion from the regular meeting last Friday, October 17th, to discuss the budget guidelines. So we will open this meeting. We had a motion open on our previous guidelines. Since that meeting, as was discussed in the meeting, we felt that we had come to some consensus that we're moving ahead with agreed upon guideline issues at least. We had made some modifications to listen to our colleagues, both in terms of addressing how the mill rate would be shown, at least potentially, and also in terms of some adjustments to the department budgets. So, but in the interim, some other things have happened. One of the issues that we had was some accounting for the changes in the DOE budget. A week ago Friday, there was some information that came in on the teacher's contract, and that information was implemented into the guidelines the following Tuesday after the long weekend. That's last Tuesday, 1 week ago, after the long weekend. And in addition, later that same day, some information was provided on the bus contract, and that also was included. Since that time, at last Friday's meeting, we also discussed the bus contract, and it was determined that there needed to be some changes in terms of its presentation in the guidelines budget estimate. So we met after that meeting, as we discussed we would. And since then, Finance yesterday presented an alternative form of the accounting, which they believe to be the correct accounting for it. So I think that the first thing I will do is to ask Mr. Fisher, who had moved that we discuss the guidelines at the last meeting, to determine if he thinks we're fine with that motion or if any changes need to be made. And then after that, I'm going to ask Ms. Lynch, our controller, to explain to us what changes have been made to the budget estimate to include the changes that have been suggested by the finance. So, Mr. Fisher.
Yeah, I think for clarity reasons, it's easiest to withdraw the previous motion that was Friday on a different version of the budget guidelines. And I would like to move adoption to get us for us of the budget guidelines as dated October 21st today. And the sheet that's been handed out and was delivered by email.
So I will second both the withdrawal of your previous motion from last Friday, as well as your motion of today.
Thank you.
Those in favor?
No, we're not voting yet.
Oh, okay. Oh,
No, it's just a motion to get it on the table.
We don't have to vote on withdrawing or anything?
No, I made the motion, I withdraw.
Oh, okay, I just want to make sure. Okay, thank you.
I also thought you were making a motion to change the, okay, we're good. We're good.
Okay, fine. I just wanted to make sure that we didn't miss.
No, we're good.
So, then, Ms. Lynch, can you, explain to us what changes were made and why they were made? I think, also involved in that discussion, who else was involved in that discussion, and what has happened. And I think we can all look at our large copy of the estimated budget to follow along with it.
So, so as far as who was involved, Agnes Kwai, budget director, Roland Geiger, our retired budget director. So basically, for the first time, this has never been done in the past, as of 2024, the state statute allows the Board of Ed to approve non-lapsing, so basically take a surplus and carry it into the following year up to 2% of their budget. So that's what we refer to as non-lapsing. So $2.5 million of funds were appropriated in fiscal '25, which dropped to a surplus for the Board of Ed. Historically, that surplus would have come back into the general fund, and the Board of Ed itself approved use of this non-lapsing account, the $2.5 million, specifically for bus contract expenses, which they knew that had not been budgeted for due to timing of the contracts in the fiscal '26 budget. So in order to reflect the year over year in the Exhibit 1, we agreed that it would be important to reflect that 2.5 million. It's already been taxed for, it's already been appropriated again in fiscal '25, it's carrying forward in fiscal '26. So we have now in the 200th line on the school column reflected the 2.5 million. So that total is now 30.288 million. And we've notated on the bottom, it's not, we're not changing the budget, we're carrying forward those funds. And then the offset is in use of Board of Ed non-lapsing, which you'll see in the funding section of this exhibit, just above the use of fund balance of the 23.8 million, you'll see the 2.5 million. So the net impact, bottom line is zero, but it is important to reflect, where those funds came from, where they were appropriated. So the change from the previous exhibit would show a lower increase from fiscal '26 to '27 in the 200th line.
And that impacted it further on that too.
So then that actually carried through, all the way. And this new exhibit is available, I guess we will be posting it, or you can. So the new, the bottom line, the increase in mill rate on this schedule is now 4.57. That again reflects the full 4 million, but it kind of shows where the 4 million came from. So now the addition in the bus contract from 26 to 27 is a 1.5 million, because the 2.5 million is reflected in fiscal '26. I know that's a little confusing. If there are any questions, I've walked through it with various members. We know that the Board of Ed decided to do this for a very specific reason, because they knew of the surplus and they knew of the issue with the bus contract at about the same time. From our discussions with them, it's not something that they're planning on doing regularly.
So, fine. I was just going to ask if Agnes or Will we get any further comments on this explanation, and then
No, I don't.
Well,
It just makes the hole in the bus contract budget, brings it up to pretty much should be $4 million in the 67 estimate right now.
thank you. So, Leslie.
No, I just wanted to make the point on this non-lapsing account, because I think there's some misunderstanding about its use. You indicated that the Board of Ed knew that they would need this $2.5 million for the fiscal '26 budget. So this was a method to have the funds so they could sign a contract. Alternatively, they would have had to gone through the additional appropriation process, which wouldn't have happened till September. So there was a timing issue. Right. I just wanted to make sure that that was on the record.
That's correct.
Any more comments on the?
I don't know if that's historically accurate.
I'm sorry.
I'm not sure that's historically accurate.
I think Joan just confirmed that that's.
You mean that you're talking the timing?
The way the Board of Ed made its decisions. We don't know that for a fact.
We don't know that for a fact. That's,
I've had conversations.
we've had conversations, but
Well, those are private,
Yeah.
you know,
yeah,
they're not in a public meeting.
that's
I think Harry raises a good point. Did the BOE approve this bus contract and the increase of the $4 million? Do we know that?
They signed the bus contract in fiscal '25. They carried $2.5 million forward from fiscal '25 to fiscal '26.
Right, but did they actually approve it? I guess,
The superintendent, I believe, has the authority to sign it. But they knew that they were short a significant amount of money that this was going to be used for. They made that motion in June to use the non-lapsing account for the transportation budget.
so, the only thing that, my question on this is, does this accounting set a precedent for the future? And what happens if we don't really know how that account will be used? I hope that this does not become a future occurrence, and also, in my opinion, it should have been at least discussed with the BEP and or the budget committee and or the liaisons, which I don't believe it was. So I think that is also a bit of a breakdown of process for $4 million, which is substantial. Okay, so since we don't have any more discussion on that, we have a budget guidelines letter before us. It is similar to the one that was presented at the budget committee meeting on Friday. As I said, we had that other meeting, which did modify the estimate budget, which is before you. And also, since we thought we were close, we expected some changes and some discussion, which we have had. But the proposed changes were actually quite substantial. And so what we've now done is we've gone back and, reviewed those changes, which came into us plenty of time. And and have included some of those changes, and also some others that were suggested by a few others. So I don't know how we'd like to go through it. I can run through the paragraphs where we have proposed the changes or accepted the changes or whatever, and that may be the best. So the first change that we have in this letter is in the third paragraph, and it's the definition of ALICE, which is asset limited, income constrained, employed. And then we added an additional, basically, clause, a couple of these little hints, to the final sentence, which is a bit dangling, and it's a sentence about the consideration of the Social Security COLA increases and the projected BLS Consumer Price Index, which I don't believe has still come out, which I think was originally due on the 15th of the month. But, and then just add the clause, the BEP uses this information in setting its objectives, just to define that a bit more.
I can make a comment?
Yes.
So, some of these are, the second paragraph and the third paragraph is important in the guidelines because it sends the message as to the context of how changes and budgets are being set. To be honest, I object to the language in the second paragraph because it talks about BET success. It talks about an exemplified budget process, and I think that does not reflect what happens in this town. It doesn't reflect what happened in last year's budget process. I proposed a much more streamlined and recognizing that there are many elected officials and volunteers involved in setting the budget and identifying the contribution and the teamwork that people provide, but all of this flowery language does not represent the BET that I've been serving on the past 2 years, the one that had a complaint lodged against it by a town employee, and it's way that the budget committee in some meetings has conducted itself. And so I strongly object to that wording, and I would ask that the revised language that I had suggested be considered and put in here.
Mr. Fisher?
Excuse me, there was no complaint filed against the BET by a town employee.
BET committee.
That needs to be correct.
And I don't refer to that complaint in it, but this language here doesn't reflect the, I think it's trying to paint a picture that I'm not sure, I know I don't agree with. The third paragraph, talks about the challenges we have, and I agree there are challenges, but it also talks about saying the town of Greenwich's success is attributed to many things, but it doesn't talk about providing excellent public education and maintaining its infrastructure, which is something that I think as a board we want to sustain and improve. So those particular language changes I would ask to be included in the document.
I'm sorry, could you just repeat this? Just the changes, not those.
So after the words senior residents, I had added, comma, provide excellent public education and proactively maintain its infrastructure. And
I'm sorry, where is this?
So in the third paragraph, the first part says the town of Greenwich's success is attributed to. I think it should be the town of Greenwich's successes, challenges, and opportunities are. Because that's what the budget is trying to do. And then after senior residents, to add, provide excellent public education and proactively maintain its infrastructure.
Those were in your markups, weren't
That
they?
was in the markets. I'm not sure, again, Leslie and I were working on communicating changes, so I don't know if it was communicated to Harry or anybody else.
Sorry.
So, you did, okay. So,
So,
but I think that sets the better context for what we're trying to do.
The first one doesn't make any sense to me. I'm okay with the second.
And you say, you mean the successive,
TOG successes, I don't understand that.
TOG successes, challenges, and opportunities are attributable to.
Yeah, I don't know why challenges and opportunities are attributable to us.
Well, it's a challenge to attract families. It's a challenge to have the best work environment. All of it is a challenge to maintain, to improve. Here, the language currently says that it's our success. And I would say we've had some success and we've had some failures.
What in the rest of the sentence is a failure?
By adding the reference to public education and maintaining its infrastructure.
That's fine.
So they're challenged. So they're related. So I would say that our public education and infrastructure, there's some success, but there are also challenges. And that's a better reflection of our actual track record.
I like how it was accepting public education and maintaining its infrastructure.
Well, that's because you're citing them as successes. I don't think they're successes. I think some part of it.
I don't think a rank of 5 in the state is a success for public education.
I think that the way we manage public education can be better. And I think maintaining our infrastructure can be improved.
There's always room for improvement.
And
A rank of 5 in the
I think
state
that's-
is fabulous.
I think the schools are doing great despite our efforts, so yes.
so I'll move on. To the next paragraph, preliminary estimate of the fiscal year 27 budget. I've added a recommended sentence from my colleagues. So it now reads a preliminary estimate of the fiscal 27 budget is attached as Exhibit 1. New sentence. It was developed assuming current staffing, service, and capital levels. I added capital levels to it because they had not added that. So hopefully, this is something that makes sense.
So capital was one thing I added, but the other suggestion I had was not incorporated. And to me, that's also critical.
What other suggestions?
Sentence was that I said is that this estimate is used to quantify a starting point for fiscal 27 and is not expected to reflect caps or guaranteed minimums in funding. And again, that is a direct result of what happened in last year's budget cycle.
Could you repeat that, please?
This estimate is used to quantify a starting point for fiscal 27 and is not expected to reflect caps or guaranteed minimum funding.
Why would that sentence have been taken out?
I don't,
It was not in ours to begin with. It was something that came in last.
I understand, but why would you take it out?
It was what I
I mean, just so the public understands, I got this draft that we're looking at 11:29 a.m. today. So we're all in this, I'm looking at this for the first time effectively right now. And if Ms. Moriarty put in a sentence that she just reread, my question is, why would that sentence be taken out? Why are we?
it wasn't taken out. It just wasn't there.
So let's stop.
it was in-
No, wait a second. Stop. So at 10:31 last night, I did receive a totally rewritten version of the guidelines. Okay, so I have been working with Ms. Moriarty to find out what we can include from that into this. And I have been considering, given the spirit of what we were trying to accomplish, the BET being responsible for the finance aspect of it and others being responsible for the operations. So this is where we are at the moment, but please be fair about
Well,
what's being accomplished here, David. You know, we are trying to work together. That was the way we finished on Friday.
No, that's fine.
Collaboration.
Try to work together.
No, but I just want to clarify, the track changes to your Friday estimate were sent to you on Saturday. So these changes to your Friday document were sent,
To me, I'm sorry, or to your caucus?
not to my caucus, to, all right,
Maybe
make
to
sure. We've had.
I'm not aware of,
You
Okay.
know, you could,
I can check. I
Call
thought I
me
sent
or
you two
texted
different
me.
versions. and
or you
one that
could have
was
called
weird.
me.
But in any event, let's go back to the substance of what were in Ms. Moriarty's edited comments. The question is, why would they be deleted? Why,
No, they would have to be added.
why were they deleted from what Ms.
They were
Moriarty?
not deleted.
Why
They
would
just weren't added.
They weren't added. to
Why
the
were they
version.
deleted from what Ms. Moriarty suggested? Let's put it that way.
Mr.
I'd like
Fisher.
to answer that. I think it's unreasonable to expect that we're going to accept all your suggested changes. I think Leslie Tarkington's done a very good job here working with Leslie Moriarty to come up with a document that should, I would hope would be acceptable to both parties. We're just not willing to include everything.
No, but that's my question. What is objectionable about the fact that these do not represent a cap? All she's saying is they don't
No,
represent a cap.
I don't think we need to explain ourselves.
Well, then, I think the public may be interested in understanding what is behind your thinking. She's simply saying these are guidelines and that they're not representing a cap. You deleted that and said, no, they are a cap. In which case,
No, we're not saying that.
I'm sorry. Let
I
me go
really
on.
object.
Okay, and let me go on. It says it reflects information noted this time and projects a mill rate increase higher than the BEP would like to see. It's the information known at this time. It could be up, it could be down. And we do all those interim changes, as you know, during the budget cycle, and sometimes we get them as interims even before we get to that point. So,
There's the point that I was making here is to communicate both to the departments as well as for all members of the BE to understand what we're looking at, is that they're not intended, the guidelines aren't intended to be caps right? We talk about that language, but we don't put it in the guidelines. And then at this year's budget meeting, it was used as a cap, and not just this year's budget, prior year budget. So I'm trying to put into writing what this committee has discussed in public before. They're not intended to be caps.
But you're looking at one specific instance within the budget. We also look at how we can work together to, whatever the goals are, stay within the inflation rate or whatever it happens to be.
Well, we agreed that the 2.5 to 3.5% is a worthy goal. And that was agreed at the last meeting. We had a very harmonious meeting. But what Ms. Moriarty was trying to do is to avoid the chaos that we set the community through by rigidly adhering to the guidelines as a cap. And so at that point, there was a $4 million reduction to the Board of Ed because it reflected what was in the guidelines. So in order to avoid that kind of misunderstanding and disruption, we want to make it explicit that these are guidelines. We're all working together as a team to try to run within 2.5 or 3.5%, but we recognize these are guidelines and not caps. All Ms. Moriarty was doing is making that explicit so there's no ambiguity and confusion, which last year and other years there was, causing a little bit of chaos that we could avoid. That's the whole point. So that's why I'm asking, why would you object to that language?
So, Mr. Fisher,
Yeah, you just explained, why I wouldn't accept this, because you're trying to hold us accountable for the past. We
You
changed,
are accountable.
excuse me, David, I have the floor.
she has the floor.
We changed the methodology in these guidelines intentionally so that there was no presumption of caps. We do not intend to, play games that way. You heard us at the debate say that we have a new team, we have a new approach, and I think you want to take us at our word. But the new methodology here is intended to be a goal to strive to reduce the increase in costs. This is an entirely new methodology. We thought you seemed to, agree with it last Friday, but you told me in a phone call this morning you don't agree with it. So I think we need to get to the meat of this, that this is a goal, not a cap.
So let me also just add something here, and that is that David brought up a good point. He said, gee, we've agreed on this range of 2.5 to 3.5. That's correct. But we actually had a number there, and this is where we agreed with you. So we have come to we crossed and we did a lot here, David, to accept overall the parameters and the perimeters of what you're requesting. So, it's a matter of working together. And so we've come a long way in terms of what you wanted. This is what you wanted. We worked it out. We have a lot of people to talk with. Yes, we've agreed to it. But, do we have to keep pushing it? Or is it now there what you wanted in principle?
No, fair enough. I mean, the last meeting we had was a good meeting, and yes, indeed, I agree there was give and take. And yes, indeed, there was give and take. Okay, granted. And the range is one example of that. And it is our fervent goal that we can get beyond all this and try to get some reasonable guidelines in. However, what Ms. Moriarty put in, because we were very, very seriously affected by what happened last year, and I recognize and accept what Mr. Fisher is saying that was discussed at the debate, and it's encouraging, and it's welcome. And all Ms. Moriarty was trying to do is add a sentence that, that delineates that. And then I'm simply saying, why would you take that sentence out? It's exactly what you said in the debate. So why not leave the sentence in? That's a simple question. That's all. Because you're right, we're making progress. And a lot of this is happening on the fly. The public should know. I'm not blaming anyone, but except the whole process is very late. And we're all reacting almost in real time, in fact, in real time, to what is being presented. It's not the best way to do this. On the other hand, it's out in the public, so it's got its benefit. So back to the question, what's wrong with the wording that Ms. Moriarty suggested? It seems to me innocuous. and reflective of what was said in the debate.
I just answered that question.
Which is,
You're trying to hold us accountable for the past.
well,
That's the answer, David.
so then you don't agree with what Ms. Moriarty is saying.
So looking forward, you would not say that these are not intended to be caps.
The goal is to strive to reduce. That's not a cap. The language is clear.
This sentence refers to just exhibit one. That exhibit one is not a cap. It's also not a guaranteed minimum. It works both ways.
Yeah, but that's intuitively obvious. It doesn't need to be stated, and I disagree with your motivation.
I think that,
You can't always get what you want.
but more importantly, I think the principle of what they wanted has been put in there, and it
No.
was agreed upon.
All right.
It was the range, and it's there, okay? That's what you wanted, and that's what was agreed upon. We really did our best, and we added additional sentence that Ms. Moriarty, has suggested, and we appreciate all the work that she and you have put into this. Okay, so going on to the next paragraph. We added an additional clause to the sentence, first sentence. And it says a preliminary estimate of fiscal 27 budget, second section, so is attached as exhibit 1. Wait a minute. Well, for this reason, the BEP requests the first selectman and BOE superintendent to evaluate all programs and services to improve productivity, reduce costs, increase revenues, and the clause is added, including through grants and donations, and then goes on, and eliminate service levels, da.
Yeah, can I just point out that, Mr. Weisbrod spoke to me this morning about, another effort that he wants to do after this, which is really covered by that paragraph. And I would say that it's not up to us to tell the managers how to do stuff. We're setting objectives, which is really what the guidelines should be.
Okay, the next place where we made a modification to the, letter itself is we've added a, further definition to the sentence. The goal is to strive to reduce the increase in costs in the estimate, budget, and adding the clause total department operating costs, because that was, what was meant, that total department operating costs. And it goes on by 150 basis points for town and for schools. The next point is,
Do you want to talk about that first?
sure.
So,
No one raised their hand. If they did, I didn't see it.
no, it's just, I'm just wondering whether you have looked at the requests that you're making for both the town and the schools, given what we know. Like, I like the guidelines to be somewhat realistic, and I think asking for up to 150 basis points, 1.5% reduction of what this chart even has, which is clearly, the only way to achieve that is headcount reduction by every department. Some departments can afford that, some can't. We know some of our largest town departments, police and fire, have returned almost zero of their budgets in the past 2 years. They use every dime that they're given. And then some of our departments are only 4 people, and so changes of reducing their budget in half, which is what this, and this is not saying, I understand the words here, reduce your budget. This is saying strive to reduce the budget. But I think even saying that that's your goal, your reach goal, is incredibly unrealistic for the town departments. Turning to the schools, that would be a $3 million reduction from this continuation budget. Which is on top of clearly what they lost last year, in that they got funded less than a continuation budget last year. It was lower than their wage inflation. So once again, the Board of Ed in this number, and it's now at a 3.87% increase, correct? I'm not looking at my actual chart, I'm looking at a different chart. But yes, so the Board of Ed's at a 4%.
4.0.
The transportation number was increased. So that means it's 1.5 percentage point reduction means that it's now a 2.5% increase. And their wages are, and they've worked very hard to accommodate this teacher contract by changing other things in the 100s, even to get this Exhibit 1, they're at 3.27 for increases there. So you're asking for ideas clearly affecting headcount, clearly affecting services of a pretty big magnitude for both the schools and the town. I think it's unrealistic to expect that you would get that number, and then what happens when they don't achieve it? I think if we put in a much more achievable level here, then we would get more actionable information. And we know that the rest of the budget, fixed charges and revenues, are two other places that change between Exhibit 1 and a final budget, that there's often movement there, sometimes positive, sometimes negative. To be honest, typically it's been positive from what we've forecast here. But the BET, has other methodologies really to accommodate, to get to the mill rate that we would want to get versus what operating increases really are. And therefore, I think the 1.5% goal, which is, and I acknowledge this isn't saying it's a mandate to cut your budgets by this amount, but even putting that number out there is unrealistic, and it's just going to cause, I think, chaos and a miscommunication within the town and the schools and other people using this document. I would prefer to see a much more reasonable, potentially achievable number. Eric?
Yeah, I just want to point out something that's not said in this sentence. You don't say reduce the increase in costs in each and every department. So you're correct, smaller departments would have a more difficult time, but we're not saying each and every department. And 150 basis points of a goal, if you set it at 100 basis points, that's all you're going to get. We've got to set big goals. We may not get the response to achieve those goals, but better to set them at a higher level.
I just think you want to build partnerships and have partners working with you, and not create scenarios that that's going to create anxiety and animosity to start with.
So actually, I'm going to, in many ways, agree with Ms. Moriarty. And the reason I'm agreeing is because, what she is suggesting is actually what we originally did in our original guidelines that were presented and discussed. But, in our preview to that, we had discussions with our colleagues and schools. And it was determined that this was a better way of doing it, which was proposed by our colleagues. And so we did agree to that. Now, a couple of things here that, we need to comment. The reason why this looks like it's onerous is because we're looking at this now after adjusted accounting for the bus contract, which in many ways is almost gimmicky to put the bus contract into fiscal year 26 the way we did it, because it wasn't approved in there as such, although there was plenty of money in there. So apparently. So, this is a way of doing it, and it's now impacted our decision-making process. And so, and that has just happened since we met on Friday. And that goes to show how difficult it is to prepare a budget when, the department's total about $650 million, and we're trying to come up with some of these points with ever-changing accounting, which has impacted us all along in this process in preparing these guidelines. So, the way this originally started out was a reduction, and it was a dollar amount to the schools. That was determined not to do it, and then we put percentage, and then we came up with this for all parties. Okay, fine. So the question is, do we mix, I'm here with it because I've already agreed. This was what you asked us to do, and Harry and I agreed with you. So, it's very uncomfortable to have this change, you know, now, today, you know, what would happen tomorrow or next Tuesday if we met once again, or Friday? To me, it makes it very difficult. I just want to make that.
What was the dollar number in your first draft? I don't think I ever,
Anyway, I think we can,
I mean,
no, it's a percent, I think.
it's still 1.5%.
No, what is, okay,
It's
so
still
can I just say, you asked me a question. We had agreed with you prior to the issuing of that, okay, if you remember.
I never got, the first time we ever got your draft was Wednesday, so before the Friday.
Well, and as we point out, even, you know, and the first time we were able to put the accounting in for the DOE was on Tuesday, and late Tuesday afternoon. So let's just make sure we all understand what was going on here.
See, let me try to raise this.
Yeah, but you know, we were trying to work with you, so this is teamwork. We
No,
left with
let's try a
teamwork.
little teamwork. Let's do that. I think that's fair. We really have made a lot of progress. And you're smiling, which is good. I like it. We agree that we as a BET, or at least the budget committee, is striving to target a range of the mill rate between 2.5% and 3.5%. We also agree that we really are sitting here in October. We don't know all the details. We know some numbers, but not all the numbers, and we'll derive those numbers in the course of the year. The issue is to put in specifics when we don't know the specifics may bog us down. It just may bog us down. We agree. We're just going to try to manage the budget within this range that we agree with. If we can run it leaner, fine. If it takes a, but we're going to run it in this range. What's causing us this butting of heads a little bit is starting to delineate these specific basis point numbers when we really don't know yet what's behind it all. And that's really the nature of the debate. That's kind of the way I look at it. I mean, we really take 3 million, you know, and there is a lot of people that are burned by the fact that we rigidly stuck to the guidelines in last year. We can wish it away, but that's the way it worked. And it was done at the very end of the process, and it really created an impression, a strong impression. What we want to do is sort of say, let's do this range, let's work on it, and to the points that are being made, if there's collaboration and bipartisanship and trust, let's see that evolve in the course of the BET to come. But when we start putting these specific numbers down, then people react. And it's not that we don't want to see the mill rate change. We agree to that, which is what's so strange about this. There's no debate on that. We agree. So why are we getting bogged down in all the rest of it when we could achieve a guideline and then work together as we would like to get it all done? That's kind of where I'm at.
So I'm going to ask Mr. Fisher a question. So Harry, at some point Friday or wherever, did you talk with Mr. Weisbrod, and was it he that suggested the 150 basis points for both the town and for the schools? And you know, was it us, or me, I think, that added the word strive rather than hard? And we were agreeable on that?
That's my impression. 150 basis points was mentioned by
Right.
Mr.
So-
Weisbrod
Right.
in a phone conversation.
Yes.
But it may not be clear as to how he was applying that. But I took that conversation, I took the
Well, we had the
change in the methodology and set it pen to paper and came up with essentially this sentence that has been modified since then. But, you know, I fail to understand why Mr. Weisbrod keeps harping on the past in dealing with the present and the future.
Before you respond, can I just say one thing? I think in the draft that we gave you, we went from 0.5 to 1%. If you can agree to a 1%, I think that's the number that should be in here. Strive for 1%.
Quite frankly,
I disagree.
I don't agree with that either, unless you make it sort of like You know, I mean, you have to look at the size of the budgets now and what a larger percentage size the education budget has been comparable to the town. You also have to look at how the town has taken the guidelines year after year. And I'll just speak for finance department and the assessor's office and how, I don't know what it is, fiscally prudent each of these departments have been and been coming in, you know, even negative, to, you know, zeros. And so they have really helped us carry the other side as it grows to be a larger percentage of our budget. So if we can have a different number for town and one for the BET, I might consider it. But, you know, Harry, I'm going to look to you on this because it was your conversations and
Well, it's not so much the conversation. I think it's good to set a high objective or a low objective, whichever
Right.
way you want to look at it. And I don't hold out that it's achievable. I don't think we should base our decision on what we presume is achievable or not. I think we ought to have some strong objectives, but put them as a goal to strive to reduce. I think it's a very reasonable approach.
Now, here's the thing, what's reasonable is where we come to an understanding 2.5 to 3.5%. We're gonna work together as a new BET and hopefully collaborate better than we did, and I hope we will, to get to that 2.5 to 3.5%. I like Ms. Moriarty's 1% idea, but for the record, just to set it straight, and you know this, Harry, because we had a long discussion this morning. Yes, I have been saying we should come up with ideas of 1.5%, but in a complete, and you know this, in a completely different context. The idea is that we should be seeking new, specific, actionable ideas from the departments and the schools, and we require the schools and the departments to come to delineate these ideas in actionable form that may take a year or two to implement. Some of them may require investments in software or other things in order to achieve savings that will occur down the road. And the objective was, as an exercise, to immediately follow the guidelines, a separate exercise to set to the departments a challenge with a format that's agreed upon, that's worked on by the finance department, that talks about things that we've been covering in the debates and elsewhere. For example, in technology and productivity, state mandates, which is a thing that Ms. Talkington has correctly pointed out. Are there ways to delineate how we can save from state mandates? For example, retention laws that requires to keep hard copies for 30 years. We would save a lot of money if we were able to change but this requires work, or things like permitting and rationalizing the permitting process, or having a single call center that the town uses instead of the different call centers, or to streamline things, perhaps parking services, and a whole list of specific actionable ideas where the departments would then generate in their budget submissions how these could be executed in a way to achieve a 1.5%. That's my 1.5% idea. That's different from sort of putting a finger in the air and saying, cut it 1.5% from, that's what we've done in the past. It's unproductive. You need to delineate what the items are that can be achieved and what efficiencies can be done, and have the departments, require the departments, together with the support of the first selectman, to do that. That's the 1.5% that we're talking about, and we would love to see it implemented. And we may get a surprising response on that. So there's no disagreement on this is what's so sad about this discussion. There's no disagreement on the need for these efficiencies. And there's no disagreement upon the band that we talked about for the mill rate. But there are many ways to get to that mill rate.
we're not yet on the middle.
No, the 2.5 to 3.5%.
No, we are. It's in another paragraph.
Oh, okay. Then I'll stop and let you continue.
And I just point out again, exactly what Mr. Weisbrot has just enumerated is covered by the previous paragraph on the bottom of the
Not at
first
all.
page.
No, that's
One
not.
follows to the other.
So let me also add something. The only reason, or one of the reasons we're having this discussion is because in very recent times, we've heard from the DOE that, you know, they have a new contract, employee contract that's far exceeded what we thought we were putting in the budget, which was a 4% increase above the inflation rate. And so we've had to add that in, and that was added in, you know, effectively last Tuesday when the information came in. Tuesday afternoon is when I got the information, or put it into the sheet. And so that was that. And the second is the bus contract and the unique accounting that we have for it. So, you know, now we all want all these efficiencies, but somehow we have to absorb this in the budget, and we have to absorb it fairly because we still are trying to achieve a mill rate increase that's around the inflation rate. Whatever that inflation rate is, I'm not going to talk about the mill rate yet. But the point here is, how do we get there, and what is the best way of doing it? You all have suggested this way. We had a way. You have suggested this way. We landed on this way. So, in a collaborative manner, so now we're trying to figure out, do we actually need this additional sentence, or can we, and this, is this the right amount? Or can we move on? It does say strive, but nevertheless, we're not waiting for like 2 years from now. We're waiting for some kind of forward progress, some kind of you know, savings, whether it's through more collaboration, fewer silos, whatever it happens to be. So I think that there's a lot of discussion on this. You know, I look to Harry more on this as my partner in this, because he was the one who moved away from the way we were, and I supported to collaborate with you, David.
Boy,
Can we move on to the bill rate?
Harry has-
Could I just make a
Oh, I'm
final
sorry,
point?
Barry.
You know, the required tax levy on Exhibit 1 shows an increase of 5.35%.
That's the old one.
the old one,
It's the one that was handed out today.
no,
I have 4.57.
4.57,
Oh,
yes.
he's looking at the levy. Required, he's looking at the levy before the.
I'm looking at the required tax levy.
Before
Yeah,
he doesn't have to be.
That's not including the grand list increase.
Can I make my point, please? The required tax levy is up 5.35%. Granted, we make an assumption that the grand list on an apples-to-apples basis would grow by 0.75%. But if we want to get the required tax levy down, which is the bottom line, then a reduction in costs of 1,500 basis points goes a long way towards getting the required tax levy closer to where it needs to be to get to the mill rate objective.
So the difference with your approach and what I'm suggesting is you're cutting a number. You're just taking a number and saying, I want that number. And that's,
No, there's a method to the,
well, I don't know what the method is. That's the struggle. And then at the end of the year,
Just that.
you don't find the number and you say the guideline said this is the number, therefore that's the number. And that's what we've been living with year after year.
please stop with the past.
I'm sorry, I've lived it. I've lived it. What I'm suggesting is we delineate and demand that the ideas be produced, because we're not cutting a number. We want to make the tax rate as low as possible, but it's not just a number. It's services or efficiencies, and that's the task that we should be pursuing. And so we agree on a number, on a range, which is great. That's really great. All of us want low taxes. We agree on that. That's great. That's a big deal. Now the only thing is, how do we get there? That's all we're arguing about, is how do we get there? It's not about keeping the taxes low.
So how do you get there
How I get there is by
without
saying,
1,500 basis?
I'm saying, let's get these ideas out in the public, on the table, before the budget committee next year,
We're
that-
talking about the guidelines, not your other idea.
Well, it's.
Your other idea is not on the table.
No, but it's, since you keep referring to the 1.5%, that's the genesis of the 1.5%. And my approach would be, let's require our departments to come up with these ideas that are actionable, produce them, so that
And
we
again,
can.
we're going around in circles, David.
Well, all right.
Oh,
It's in the previous paragraph.
And also, we've tried this before, and even though I support the word strive, it's not that. We all need to work together, and there are departments that certainly do collaborate with us.
Yeah.
And there are others that, are very demanding, and it's very difficult. And I just want, while I didn't intend to go back over the estimated budget, but other points are being brought up here. I mean, healthcare. Healthcare is going up 13%. It's the second largest cost, whether we're talking about the town or the schools.
Yeah.
And that number is very substantial. And what I heard from the meeting yesterday, there could be some risk that it's going up 14%. So when that goes up, so do the costs in OPEB, et cetera, and we haven't yet seen that analysis. So we have a lot of risks here. In many years, we look to the risks to the, upside, that we can pull these numbers down and achieve our inflation, or a mill rate near the inflation rate. And we have other sources of funding that we're using. You all wanted us to pull down the use of fund balance. And I agree that that's a risk that, we want certainly fund balance to at least be flat, if not growing. That's what the rating agencies expected. That's what we included in these budget guidelines. So, we're looking at that. But we can't keep doing these other things, knowing what the risks are in fixed charges and these other areas that we haven't put in there. Interest rates are coming down, so we won't have the interest income that we've had in past years. That's a fact. However, we have been very, very fortunate to have strong building permits and strong conveyance taxes. And depending on how the race goes in New York City, in 2 weeks, perhaps our conveyance taxes will continue to be very strong. But nevertheless, I have heard, while our building permit fees were very strong in this month's budget committee meeting last Friday, I've heard that, when we see the numbers coming in from the assessor's office, the way they look at building permits, those numbers are weak. So, there's a lot of risks and unknowns here. It was you suggested the 1.5%. We moved from our
So go.
position.
Well, let's be,
Can I just make a statement?
Sure.
Because we're approaching these guidelines really from a different perspective, and that's one of the issues.
Yeah.
How does the BET want to work with departments to try to get to the goal that we need and provide the services we want at the lowest cost, keeping tax rates down? I think everybody sort of agrees with that general statement. How you get there is the issue. The concern that the comments that we're making, which sound very specific and detailed, really are just how you get there. I just like the operating budget, continuation budget is a bunch of estimates. So is fixed costs, those charges, the use of fund balance. Those are all tools that are available as we get to the end to need to adjust one way or the other to try to make things work out together. We also know that when the conversations come and the revaluations are out, we have to do a good job of explaining that the town is not benefiting from whatever percent valuation increase there is on the grand list, that the mill rate goes down by that same amount. So we're really looking at year-to-year changes, but it affects each taxpayer differently. But I think my issue is the BET, the way it's operated for lots of years, not just 1 year, doesn't feel like it's a partner with the town and the schools in getting to the right answer, right? It feels like they've got a challenge to meet to whatever guidelines say they can, but they don't, they're making service level adjustments on their own, but there isn't really a conversation over How did you get there? What does the numbers include? Even this language doesn't tell us, you made savings, we're gonna wanna grab those savings, but we really don't understand what the impacts are. I think maybe kinder, gentler is how I'd like to see these things, and more collaborative. And the way they're written, it doesn't feel that way. And it doesn't, I think the challenge here, the fact that the mill rate number and the goal that that's driving what this request is hidden in the last paragraph also isn't quite communicating what we want to communicate. I don't know if we're going to get there. I can't agree to all the 50 basis points.
Can I make a suggestion to go forward? Because I think we're now going around in a circle. And I have not talked to anybody about this, just by thinking. We're going in a circle, and it's not productive, and we're tying up people in the room and whoever's listening. Would it make some sense to ask, I know the four of us can't meet offline, but if Leslie and Leslie were to spend a little time together off, just to try to hammer some of this stuff through, and then I don't think we're going to come to an agreement on this right now. Part of it is that things, came upon us for whatever reason late. We're really just reacting to changes one person made and the other one made. Wouldn't it be a better idea for perhaps the two of you to see what, if you can, whether there's a way to meld all this? Because we're pretty close. I mean, it's not that, it's pretty close.
We tried. I'm sorry, but
Yeah, I agree.
I can.
All right, all right. I just thought it was worth saying.
Leslie?
All right.
I posed a question which hasn't been answered. How do you expect to get the required tax levy down from a 5.35% increase without a 150 basis point objective on a goal? Nobody's answered that question to me. Simple math. You're supporting a 2.5 to 3.5% bill rate increase. You can't get there
It gets
without a high goal.
at 1%. It gets close to the top of the range on operating costs, and then we are not accounting
You're not
for
getting to
changes.
the range.
It's not. You're not assuming any changes in fixed costs that may favorably impact the budget.
I did make a comment that I think this year there's more risk in fixed costs, fixed charges than there has been in past years. I think that at this point in time, looking forward to the February meetings, I think that there's risk there. And so I don't think we can count on that the way we have in the past.
That's right.
Another thing that we've done here is that we've included, with the help of our assessor, another, 25 basis points. So 75 going up 0.75 rather than 0.50 in terms of the grant list. We push that, and we push that, or she's pushed that for us, based on the building permits that we've received so far. But she sees a weakening of that. So, last year we're very fortunate because the estimated grant list went up 1.16. But we had projected 0.50. We may not have that, likely won't have that advantage as we go to the mill rate. And what we're trying to do is figure out a way. Now, we had a different way. We thought we had consensus on Friday. And now you're saying you're walking away from it. That's fine. You have that privilege. We have that
That's an unfair characterization.
Okay, so we're still discussing it, Leslie. I'm trying to figure out, does anyone have any other ideas? Can we have a different percentage on the town than on the schools? No. Oh, would you be willing to consider that?
I mean, if you're looking for the, 3.4 million of reduced budgets from the continuation budget, right now it's being split on a pro rata basis. Any change to that, you're gonna ask more from the schools and less from the town. No, I can't. They're working on a smaller base to begin with, so.
We're not setting dollar objectives.
You said the percentage, 1.5%
It's a
is
goal.
$3.5 million.
We're not talking dollars, though. Let's get away from that.
I don't know how you get away from it, but okay.
And it is a goal to strive. It was not, goal as I heard it on Friday was to do it. And this is to strive. So, you know,
I suggest we move to a vote.
I just want to go through the next point. And
I think we've sort of gone through it already.
we have it? Okay. And while we have a range, residents expect taxes to be affordable and not to exceed inflation. And we don't know whether inflation will be up for today or down for today. So it's your range situation. Okay? So that's the rest of those 12 months.
Take vote.
No other motions.
And we're voting on what Leslie Talkington sent out at 11:29.
We added, we will add those words that Leslie Moriarty suggested, that were in, I think it was paragraph 3, to add, provide public education and maintain its infrastructure, I believe it was. But well, look at her words.
I'll make the motion, which is to adopt the guidelines that were shared by me to you last evening. To replace-
You can't make that motion.
I can read the guidelines, to replace the guidelines with, and I'll start reading the guidelines.
Well, wait a
You're
second,
voting-
we have a
I'm
motion on
amending
the
your
table.
guide,
Okay.
I'm amending, my motion is
Make a motion to amend.
the motion on the table to approve alternate guidelines which read as follows. You want me to read them?
No.
So alternate guidelines as proposed by David and me on October 20th.
Sorry, is that motion that Leslie has just made, is that motion? Just sort of repeating it, it's a motion to amend, Mr. Fisher's motion, to substitute, is that
Yes.
the word? Substitute, guidelines proposed by Ms. Moriarty and Mr. Weisbrod. I say proposed guidelines dated October 20th by Ms. Moriarty and Mr. Weisbrod. Do I have a second to that motion?
Second.
Seconded by David.
Discussion.
Wait a second, I just, can I just write this down so I make sure that I get this? Okay.
Yeah, I just want to point out, especially for the public, that, Ms. Tarkington and I worked very diligently since those proposals were made late last night, to incorporate and come to a mutually agreeable draft that was presented this morning.
If I could just make one other point, it refers to one thing that's in the new motion document, is that there's a discussion of capital. The original
Yes.
guidelines of yours doesn't refer to capital in the text at all. There is a number in Exhibit 1, which is not highlighted, and so it's not clear. I don't know if that other exhibit refers to how it's calculated, but there's also no mention of a 5-year capital, which has been a proposal, and which has been used by the first selectman in the past few years, and that's now missing from this. And it's, again, another gap in the original guidelines first moved today.
So I will make a comment on that. I did accept some of your language into the fourth paragraph. The sentence, and I read it, it was developed assuming current staffing, service, and capital levels. In addition, I did, there is a fiscal year 27 budget additional background information page attached. And I made changes to that page. based on some of your comments made. So they include, addressing the issue with the open capital, the fact that, some of the open capital is in building committees, and I made that change there. I also, did, add some changes, other changes, and also, a bullet point, as the final bullet point of that section, I believe. It says, reads, a 5-year plan, capital plan estimate should be identified following a capital planning public hearing. Mr. Fisher announced that there would be a capital plan public hearing on November 13th, Harry? When is
Yes,
it?
November 13th. is
November
the thing.
13th. So there is a bullet point in the information section that doesn't provide a number, although we have talked about, different people have talked about different numbers, for an opportunity to make that. And so that would be public at some point later this year. And certainly our town administrator, who was with us earlier, would be working on it, along with our first selectman, and I suppose, whoever, I suppose, current or future PEP members. So I just wanted to make sure that people understand that, there's also an attachment here with many bullet points, and try to include some of your topics that you brought up in terms of a much expanded
Nevertheless,
27 budget additional background information.
Nevertheless, Ms. Moriarty's point is correct. There's no number in here for 5-year. There's no solidification on the 5-year capital plan, nor even on the forthcoming capital number. So that was in the amendment that she, or in the comment she put in, and it was deleted. But
No,
okay,
I just would like to make a comment on that too. This is based on level services. What we did was we took the capital number, this is the capital plan for fiscal year 27. We were told, Leslie and I together, and now it's been made public through the superintendent of public schools, that she would recommend moving out the $42 million or thereabouts of the Riverside School to the next year, fiscal year, because they can't get all of that done into the fiscal year 27, so fiscal year 28. The number in here, just the same way as we're talking about, level services developed, assuming current staffing, service, and capital levels. And again, the capital levels for that is the current capital plan for fiscal year 27 minus that one change, nothing else. Trying to accommodate in the spirit of taking this back to post one page from what was about 8 pages. And now you're trying to make us put into all of these same one page plus just over.
But let me also say that the guidelines say it reflects the information we know now. We know more now about the fiscal 27 capital budget besides just changing our side. But let's take this to a vote.
Yeah, let's vote on the amendment.
Okay, so those, I don't need to repeat the amendment, right? Those in favor of Ms. Moriarty's and Mr. Weisbrand's amendment?
Aye.
2. Those against? 2. Okay, are we ready to go to the
I think so.
Mr. Fisher's original motion? Mr. Fisher, do you want to repeat that? Or you just?
No, I don't think we need
Okay.
to.
Okay, so now we have Mr. Fisher's motion. Those in favor of Mr. Fisher's motion? 2. Those opposed to Mr. Fisher's? 2.
Okay, I move we adjourn.
Mr. Fisher moves that we adjourn at 1:19, something like
17 on my phone.
1:17 p.m. Any second to that?
Second.
Second by Ms. Moriarty. Those in favor? Okay. 4-0. Motion has been passed, and I thank you very much. And we have a PEP meeting. meeting at 6:30. And show guidelines for the other, correct, Mr. Bishop?